Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 3:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Hey, coming up this hour, this man worked for President Trump. He's a great guy. Tim Murtaugh will be with us, former senior advisor to the Trump 2024 campaign. He'll react to the president's big joint address to Congress last night. At 4:30, Dr. Sebastian Gorka joins us. He's working in counterterrorism for the President of the United States, and he was at Dulles overnight to receive that terrorist that the President of the United States announced was headed back to America. We got him. We brought him back. Sebastian Gorka saw it all happen. He'll tell us what went down. That's at 4:30. 5 o'clock, Emily Jashinsky is here. And you can join us at 888-630-9625. 888-630-WMAL. A great start in terms of joint addresses to Congress from the President of the United States last night. As soon as I heard him utter the words, America is back, I knew this was going to be a good one.
Speaker Johnson, Vice President Vance, the First Lady of the United States, members of the United States Congress, thank you very much, and to my fellow citizens, America is back.
Is back. Is that not your favorite version? Maybe you haven't quite vocalized this. I will for you. Growling Trump is my favorite. The growling delivery of America is back, which I enjoyed. And I will say, and I told Dan Bongino this in the last few hours. He was gracious enough to have me on his fine program, and we were chatting about this. Didn't you feel like the speech flew last night? If we were home, I flipped it on the television. I was sitting with my wife. I poured myself a glass of what was it? I think it was Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. It was a nice glass of bourbon. Enjoying the speech. It flew by. And I enjoyed all of it. I loved the president's presentation. I loved the recitation of how things have gone since he's been back. I loved his forward-looking vision for the country. And I loved how just absolutely buffoonish these Democrats looked. They couldn't control themselves. The big story all day going into the speech yesterday was, what are the Democrats going to do? They're going to try and protest, some of them, and that the Democrat leadership, to the extent such a thing even exists, was trying to warn all of the Democrats, don't put on a show. Don't do anything to try and draw attention to yourself. It's going to look ridiculous. We're trying to make a case that somehow Trump is the child and we're the adults, that we are the decorum people. And it began within seconds. Democrats jeering the President of the United States. Barely audible, but just enough to know they were being psychotic.
We won the popular vote by big numbers and won counties in our country.
Republicans stepping up. I can't even believe it. Listen to them. They're unified. All right, so the troops came rushing in to help the President of the United States. It was funny to watch J.D. Vance. I love watching J.D. Vance's expressions, don't you? Right there behind the president. So isn't that nice? Two Republicans right behind a Republican president of the United States for a joint address to Congress. On the right, of course, you had Speaker Mike Johnson, who clearly has lots of practice at how to manage his face. He was, right? Didn't you notice? Right, Corey? Speaker Johnson, he knows what to do with his face during the whole speech. There's a lot of thoughtful nodding and shaking his head in concern at the correct times, heavy breathing when necessary, a little gust of air as his cheeks expand just to let you know that, oof, this is a tough thing that the president's talking about. Meanwhile, J.D. doesn't play games like that. J.D. just sits in the back. He'll clap when necessary, but as a Marine, he just sits there. He looked a lot like the general officers who were sitting in the front row, except for when things got so out of hand that he said, hey, maybe we should throw that guy out of the room. And you even saw J.D. gesturing, like with his arm, get him out. And that guy was not the singer, but the buffoon known as Al Green, the congressman who constantly tries to impeach President Trump. Al Green making a very big scene early in this thing. And Speaker Mike Johnson taking the gavel. It must be a weird thing as the president's attempting to speak and saying, hey, I got to pause this thing so we can kick this guy out.
Mr. Green, take your seat. Take your seat, sir. Take your seat. Finding that members continue to engage in willful and concerted disruption of proper decorum, the chair now directs the Sergeant at Arms to restore order. Remove this gentleman from the chamber.
Oh, so it can be done. It is possible, isn't it? So, you gave him a lot of chances. Al Green, you got all these chances. Al Green there with his cane, waving his cane around. What is it with these Democrats and their canes? Huh? What's the deal there? For those of you who are fond of American history, you may recall the caning of Charles Sumner from 1856. This is Charles Sumner was an abolitionist Republican senator from Massachusetts. An abolitionist, meaning he wanted to get rid of slavery. That's kind of the whole deal of the Republican Party in the 1850s. And he was attacked physically by a congressman, a Democrat called Preston Brooks, a full-blown pro-slavery Democrat from South Carolina, who takes his cane and beats the Republican senator, Charles Sumner, into a pulp for calling for abolition and criticizing slaveholders. So this is the history of Democrats, waving canes around menacingly and hitting Republicans. Also, the use of the Sergeant at Arms to manhandle a member of Congress, that too has been done before. Although yesterday, Speaker Johnson was very courteous to Al Green. All he did was call on the Sergeant at Arms to please remove him, and the Sergeant at Arms goes down and basically says, look, you know what's about to happen. So Al Green grabs his things and he leaves the room under his own power. It's not always that way. Back in 1988, then Democrat Senate Majority Leader Robert Byrd, the KKK guy, ordered the Sergeant at Arms of the United States Senate to organize a posse. So the KKK guy ordered a posse to chase down Republican senators to force them onto the floor of the Senate. In fact, the posse that Robert Byrd deployed, using the Senate Sergeant at Arms, had to carry Senator Bob Packwood, Republican of Oregon, into the Senate floor. They captured him in the Senate offices, they picked him up, and they carried him feet first onto the Senate floor back in 1988. That actually happened. Speaker Johnson is a nice guy. They just asked Al Green, hey, would you please knock it off? Things are escalating, and they got Al Green out of there. After the speech, Speaker Johnson was asked about booting Al Green.
Well, we escorted him off the floor. He couldn't behave himself. It's quite shameful. It brought shame on, I'm sure his constituents are not proud of that tonight. But I suspect that there'll be a censure resolution brought on the floor to discipline him. We have to do that inside the House. We have to maintain decorum.
Also, what was Al Green yelling about? Does anyone know? These idiots, they're not mic'd up. There's no microphone in front of them. The best they can hope for is that some of the ambient noise in the room gets picked up by some random microphone. Nobody knows what Al Green was screaming about. He just looked like a lunatic. It was like a car alarm just going off in the middle of the speech, and somebody's like, get the keys. We got to turn that thing off. It was insane. And he's insane. So they booted him. Thank goodness. They got rid of him. Yeah, they were crazy last night. In fact, David in Missouri is calling in line 5. David, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, David.
Hey, I just wanted to thanks for taking my call, and I just wanted to make a comment about the speech last night, how the Democrats sat there and just basically sat on their hands and wouldn't even acknowledge anything good. The little boy with the brain cancer.
Yeah.
And was made an honorary member of the Secret Service, I believe.
Yes.
And they wouldn't even applaud that little boy.
What was the message that you got from that, David? What are they telling you when they do that?
Yes, they're just insane, is what they tell me.
There's something so deeply callous and soulless to have a response like that. And also, it's just tactically mentally ill because – but wouldn't you understand that, like, okay, look, this is this big thing. Even if you disagree, as they do with President Trump, you get a kid with cancer who's had, like, an untold number of surgeries to try and heal him. He's lived way past what the doctor said he would even be capable of. That whole room, the Republicans were all celebrating him. His name's DJ Daniel. Yeah. And the Democrats couldn't bring themselves to even offer even courtesy applause to the kid. And do they even – you don't have to have a soul to know what that looks like. It is awful.
Yeah. It's shameful, and I believe that the American people are just going to get to a point where they won't even vote for a Democrat anymore.
I think they're on their way, David. You're in Missouri. Thank you, David. I appreciate the call. A smart point. I do think we've talked about this quite a bit in these postmortems of the election, looking back and saying, hey, did Democrats learn anything? And the answer to that appears to be a resounding no. No, they haven't. Carl is calling from Arizona now on line 1. Carl, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, good afternoon, Vince. Hey, I just want to let you know that I just started listening to you about a week ago. I got pointed towards you by a friend of mine, and I was like, I told him, I said, after your first show, I was like, oh, this is great. This guy's awesome. And I was really pleased to hear that last Friday, Dan Bongino. I've been listening to Bongino for 6 years now. I'm part of the Bongino Army, and I faithfully listen to the Bongino show. And I couldn't have been more pleased when I heard that you were taking over. And we were talking. We're just a bunch of old grabbers out in the desert, retired and kind of staying out of all the cold. In the Arizona desert, and we sit around and talk politics all the time. And I told my buddy, I said, having Vince take over for Dan is like having a Rush Limbaugh quality guy take over for a Rush Limbaugh. And I mean that. This is just great news, and I really look forward to having you take the helm, and becoming a part of the Coglianese Army. So,
well, I have to say, first of all, thank you. That's really nice of you. Are you serious? You just started listening last week for the first time, and then suddenly on Tuesday you're told that your whole radio schedule is going to be upended?
Yeah, no. I mean, so I've been knowing that, of course, that Bongino was going to, that he was going to work for the FBI,
yes,
and we were all wondering who's going to take over. I was like, oh my God, there goes my mornings now, And but I just started listening to you. Like I said, it was a little over a week ago I started listening to you.
That's so cool.
And I really like the show. I really like how you take the call-ins too. That's my only, I wish Dan would do that a little bit more, but he addressed that today. That's kind of not his thing.
He's got a lot to say. He's got to say it all. Yeah, no, there's a lot going on always, and it's always a balancing act on these radio shows. It's a symphony. You see, no one. Yeah. It's and my view is that we want to just put the best damn product we can together, and whether that's audio, whether that's my monologuing or your calls or anything else. We're always thinking it through. Carl, thank you. You've contributed greatly today, and I'm really appreciative.
Yeah, no, we're really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to it. So all the best to you, man.
Thank you very much, Carl, and I hope to hear from you in the futer. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, see ya.
Let me see. I've got Jason in Kensington, line 3. Jason, sir, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, g'day, Vince. First of all, congratulations on the move to midday. We're going to, definitely. We're going to. Just don't forget the locals. Yeah.
Jason, is that going to work for you? Is this going to work for your schedule? Are you going to be able to pick us up?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm in the work truck all day, so it's going all day. But it's a great move. I mean, they couldn't have picked a more articulate sort of guy who knows his stuff, and it's good to see that you made the. You're a good man. You made the show there.
Thank you. What did you think of the president? What did you think of the president last night? Let's talk about that guy.
It was great. It's like watching the old WWF. It's like it's the show. He's a real good showman, and he knows how to set these Democrats up. He just set them up like a set of pins, and they fell for the whole thing. They
really did.
He knew exactly what they were going to do, and he had the right guests on.
You know what the biggest tell to me was on that, Jason, was when President Trump brought up eggs last night.
Yeah,
and I'm sitting there laughing. I'm loving the whole thing. And he brings up egg prices and how badly Joe Biden screwed up the bird flu and left the rest of us with these awful egg prices. And the Democrats, I think I heard 2 heads explode in the crowd because they thought that was their talking point. They had somehow convinced themselves they had a winning talking point on eggs. And the only man who had a microphone last night and a primetime television spot all across the country gets up there and says, who really screwed up all these egg prices? It's these Democrats. And they went nuts. And I sat there and I thought, just like you did, Jason, he's got their number. He played them like a fiddle last night.
He did. I mean, he did. And the thing is, too, with his humour and his sort of upbeat humour, he sets them up, and they literally take it seriously. It's like they have no return on his humour. They don't know how to react to his humour, and it makes them look even more stupid. I mean, they just don't. I mean, they react with his humour with seriousness when they should come up with their own stuff, but they can't because they're, like I said, they're all just in lockstep with each other.
Yes.
They've been given a set of instructions,
And the rest of us are done with the humorless scolds. We don't like them, and we'd like them to be as far away from power as possible. Hey, Jason, thank you, sir. It's always so nice to hear from you, and I appreciate the compliments.
Hey, thanks, mate.
All right,
okay.
There's Jason in Kensington. Matt's calling in from Rockville, line 3. Hey, Matt, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Matt, let's see. There he is. Hey, Matt.
Hey, congrats to everyone and to your wife and family as well for seeing you now in more normal business hours, I'll tell. Just wanted to say, it seems like Al Green, Representative Green, he may have been obstructing or disrupting an official government proceeding, something that we've heard a lot about on the right over the last 4 years. And I know that they have immunity for their speech when they're recognized on the floor, but he was not on the floor. So, if the people on the left wanted to demonize Trump and say he was going after him, maybe just put a little heat on him. Just throw out the idea that maybe he was doing something that was inappropriate.
Yeah, maybe go beyond that censure resolution that Speaker Johnson was talking about. It was insurrection-y after all, and plus he had a cane with him. It was an armed insurrection. Matt, this is a very interesting and important point. We'll see if there are more consequences for Mr. Green. Mr. Green. Coming up, Tim Murtaugh will be with us. He is a longtime Trump guy. He worked for Trump. And I'll get his reaction to the president's address to the joint session of Congress. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 3:35 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up today, Sebastian Gorka is here at 4:30. He handles counterterrorism for the White House. We'll discuss the terrorist that the United States has just taken all the way to Dulles last night, now in our custody. And Dr. Gorka was there to see the terrorist's arrival this morning. We'll get a recap from him. Emily Jashinsky's here at 5 o'clock. We'll chat with her about the president's big address last night, and we'll talk to you at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL.
The media and our friends in the Democrat Party kept saying we needed new legislation. We must have legislation to secure the border. But it turned out that all we really needed was a new president.
Banger after banger last night in an even unusually good speech for President Trump. He was in rare form. Here to discuss all of it, Tim Murtaugh, the founder of Line Drive Public Affairs and a senior advisor to the Trump 2024 campaign. Tim, good to have you back with us, sir.
Good to be with you, Vince. Thanks for having me back on. And congratulations to you, old buddy. That's big news out of you. That's great. Good for you.
Thank you very much, Tim. It's going to be a lot of fun to take the old 12-3 slot. That's a very big deal. You're right. Let me ask you about what you thought of the president's address last night. I did feel like he was on an even higher level than he usually is.
Yeah, I mean, you just said it. It was banger after banger, and he was mixing policy. He was talking about things that Americans care about. And I think he even slipped in a little bit of stand-up comedy there. That clip that you played there. There was a guy last night who loves America. He loves the job of being president, and he was having fun. He truly was having fun. I know it clocked in at an hour and 40 minutes, and honestly, it could have gone another hour, and I think I wouldn't even have noticed the length of the speech. It was the most entertaining speech I think I've seen any politician give in my lifetime, and especially contrasted with the joyless, recalcitrant, resentful Democrats filling the chamber and sometimes, raising a ruckus, and one of them even getting kicked out. I mean, the contrast was unbelievable. Tatis, Fernando Tatis Sr. hit 2 grand slams in 1 inning against 1 pitcher 25 years ago. And that's pretty much what Donald Trump did to the Democrats last night.
What were they thinking? Just in terms of, like, if you as you assess the communication strategy to the extent that there was one last night, what were the Democrats even thinking? And do you get the sense that they even have a leader who's capable of getting them on the same page?
Well, somebody had to come up with the idea of holding up those dumb paddles. And I don't know if the Democrats are familiar with this thing that we've got now called the internet. But when people see a picture like that, that's like a template for a meme, right? You don't even have to be that well versed in computers to be able to fill in what you want to say on those 2 paddles.
And they look
what
like
they're doing.
They look like auction paddles, to be honest with you. I just kept thinking, I'm like, oh, this is what they're used to. They're always like, basically stealing everything to the highest bidder. So they're raising their auction paddles in the middle of this thing, and they're like, hey, now's not the time. People are watching.
Yeah, and I think Al Green probably was off doing his own thing. That was self-motivation, self-motivated immolation by him. But the paddles, you had some of the women there wearing pink outfits. You had some of the black members wearing black outfits. And what they were doing was it really reveals what Democrats believe in their hearts. They're identifying themselves based on what subgroup they think they belong to. And I think America is moving past that kind of identity politics. And also, they're still trying to run the 2020 playbook. This is like, it reminds me of this resistance bit. They're still running the resistance bit. They fail to realize that's basically what they ran in 2024, and they got their clocks cleaned. And they don't know how to adjust. The majority of the country is with Donald Trump. He won the popular vote. He won every single battleground state, and it was not particularly close. And they have not gotten the message that they can't run the same stuff that they thought was working for them in 2019 and 2020 and expect success. Donald Trump's superpower, or one of his superpowers, is making his political opponents lose their minds. And that is exactly what you saw last night from the Democrats.
Well, that's for sure. So they were sitting on their hands during a bunch of really important moments, touching moments, as President Trump highlighted some of the great stories in the gallery, American citizens, and some of the tragic stories in the gallery, people who have lost loved ones to armed foreign nationals who just have committed heinous acts against American citizens. And it seemed like the Democrats, honestly, they literally were looking at their phones in many cases. They had taken their phones out and were staring at them. And I don't think that when the average viewer looks at that, it doesn't look like an insult to President Trump, which is, I think, what they meant to do. It looks like an insult to the Americans who were there.
Yeah, and I mean, the worst of the moments, of course, was of the fantastic story. I don't mean the worst of the moment. This moment of the speech was really touching and fantastic. I think, as you were just alluding to, DJ Daniel, the young 13-year-old kid whose dream was to become a law enforcement officer, and they made him an honorary Secret Service agent during the midst of the speech. And the Democrats couldn't even be bothered to applaud this young fellow who is still living with and has survived childhood cancer. They hate Donald Trump so much, they can't see that, to stand and congratulate this young guy who is battling things that most of us could never possibly understand. Democrats, this is how much Donald Trump has broken their brains. They're on issue after issue. In politics, we call these 80-20 issues or 70-30 issues, but most of these are 80-20 issues. That is, 80% of Americans feel a certain way, and only 20% feel the opposite way. Democrats are over and over and over again on 80-20 issues. They pick the 20 side simply because Donald Trump is on the other side. When it comes to things like defending women's sports and making sure that men don't compete in women's sports where women actually have a chance to compete against other women and maybe not get injured for their trouble if a man is allowed to compete in those sports, that's an 80-20 issue. That's a no-brainer. And the Democrats have sided with the 20 simply because Donald Trump is on the other side. They're committing political suicide every single day, and it's because they are an absolute prisoner. The party is prisoner to the radical left fringe of the party. Everything you saw last night was a play for the radical far left Republican base. They are stuck with it. There's nothing they can do about it. They have to keep the base happy because their base goes nuts if they don't.
What did you think of the speech writing last night? Obviously, the president apparently reportedly pretty involved in this, but they don't do run-throughs or anything. He's just happy to do it when he gets up there. It does seem like the White House put together an excellent speech insofar as it did lay out his accomplishments nicely And it seems like Democrats fell into every single trap that the president delivered rhetorically.
Yeah, they really did. It was a masterful speech. It was well constructed, and it was very well delivered. I really think that's the best speech that I've ever heard Donald Trump give, and I've heard him give a lot of speeches. And I think last night was peak Trump. I think it was his best, and it hit on, aside from the entertainment value, and I thought it was very poignant and moving in some parts, and I thought it was really laugh out loud funny in other parts. But it was also very substantive. We talked about the border, of course. He talked about the women's sports, as I just mentioned. He explained what he thinks tariffs are useful for and why he uses them and what he hopes that they'll achieve. He talked about spending, and he went through all the different insane spending items that DOJ has found and how we're wasting taxpayer money, hundreds and hundreds of millions and billions of dollars.
Yes.
And the Democrats, once again, they fall into that trap. They're not applauding for that, which implies that they're okay with that kind of spending. They can't be opposed to that kind of spending because Donald Trump is opposed to that kind of spending, and so they tacitly endorse it. He went through all the tax cuts. He talked about he thinks he's on the verge of a breakthrough with actually achieving a peace deal with Ukraine. All of these things, one after another. This is Donald Trump is accomplishing more in his first 100 days in office than most administrations would manage to do in 8 years if they got 2 terms. He laid all that out in that speech last night, and he managed to make it entertaining to watch. Again, as I said at the beginning, if it had gone on for another hour, I think it might have still been too short.
Yeah, it was remarkable to watch all that. In the meantime, I'm really appreciative of you, Tim, joining us today. Thank you for your analysis. Always good to talk to you, sir. I look forward to doing that in the future.
Thank you very much, Vince. Thanks for having me on, and good luck on your new endeavor.
Thank you very much. This is Tim Murtaugh, former senior advisor to President Trump in the 2024 campaign, founder of Line Drive Public Affairs. Let's go to the phones. We've got Roger in Clarksburg, Maryland, line 1. Hello, Roger. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I'll say off the bat, I'm basically a moderate Republican. I see both sides. I'm not hardcore one way or the other. But I would just, in listening to the last speaker, and I have 3 quick points. I'm kind of sorry that it's turned into the basic judging the performance on the entertainment value. This isn't the WWF. This is the world.
You're allowed to have entertainment value in addition to substance. In fact, that's the best way to deliver information.
Right, but the chuckle like it's a talk show. I don't want to debate that. I do have another point. It's going to seem like I'm representing. I'm not condoning the Congressman Green's behavior by any stretch, but wasn't it when Biden was giving addresses that we had some shouting and heckling and interruption from the congressmen in the gallery then? I mean, why was that not so offensive then, but now it is?
So I think, are you referring to, there was Marjorie Taylor Greene had yelled out that she wanted President Biden to finally say the name Laken Riley, right? Is that what you're referring to?
I just remember she and I believe Congressman Boebert, again, it's not a clear, but I do remember that whatever the topic was, it was heckling and yelling out and interrupting the president's, there was no decorum there either. So,
It's a perfectly fine question. I like it. I think it's worth judging these things on the merits. The question of whether or not President Biden would ever acknowledge a death that he was quite unfortunately in part responsible for, Laken Riley, is a real question. Al Green has defined himself by these meaningless theatrics in his entire time in Congress when he constantly, during the first Trump administration and now this one, he's routinely filed for impeachment of President Trump on, what was the last time? This recent one was dastardly deeds. That was the claim. He's guilty of dastardly deeds, which is hilarious and meaningless. And whereas Marjorie Taylor Greene did bring up a very legitimate point. And to your point, Roger, sure, yes, if we're in the world where these guys do follow the rules and we can have some comedy, meaning COMITY, and we can all work together and have some decorum, that's good. But I think in terms of just assessing how both of those things went down, Marjorie Taylor Greene's concerns were far more legitimate than whatever Al Green was trying to deliver last night.
Well, point made. Just if you're looking at the surface of decorum in the hallowed halls of Congress, then it's, both strikes. Anyway, thanks for taking the call.
Yeah, well, the other piece, Roger, the other piece is it was Joe Wilson who yelled out "You lie" to President Obama. Now, It seems like so many years ago. And he was treated like he had just committed a war crime. It was considered one of the worst violations of decorum that had ever happened in Congress. Never mind the caning of Charles Sumner or anything else, or the literal attacks on Congress that we've seen through the years by radicals. They treated Joe Wilson like he had done something just horrific. And now the same party that took that tone has Al Green screaming in the middle of a joint address to Congress, and thankfully we were able to escort him out of the building yesterday. So just to give you some more context for this particular kind of discussion.
Well, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Stay reasonable.
Thanks,
you.
Roger.
Bye.
I know, I try. I am. They call me Mr. Reasonable. That's one of my nicknames. Let me see here. I got Lee in Leesburg, line 2. Hello, Lee. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Great to talk to you. I just got to say congratulations. Okay, and we're glad you're going to be around.
Yes.
We're just like my wife and I are excited to see what's going to happen at this time. So we'll just look forward to it.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
And yeah, so hey, I've been I'm from a small town in Midwest, steel town. When I came to Washington D.C., I looked at this place and I said, how in the hell could people live like this? And this was during the time when Reagan was president, and depression was going on in Midwest, like steel towns at that time. I mean, it was freaking depressing.
Yeah.
And I look at this town, it's D.C., and I said, how in the heck could people live like this? How could this go on when there is this like depression going on out in other parts of the country? And what I'm feeling that I'm seeing here, what's happening in this Trump administration, is that the bureaucracy, the waste, everything that defines this Washington bureaucracy. I've been saying this cannot go on forever.
Yeah.
What is happening here cannot go on, and I don't know how in the future, like, people are going to want to continue to pay for this. People,
it's
who are
crazy.
struggling.
Yeah, I mean, you're right.
Possibly, and I'm just like, so. My view of that speech last night was like, hallelujah, thank you, President Bush. And secondly,
President Trump.
I feel like I'm
assume he
watching
meant
the
Trump.
Democrat Party just disintegrate.
Yes.
That's what it looked like to me.
Yeah, they're rudderless, those guys. And you're right. The government for a very long time has been larded up and lethargic. And in other words, not productive and not efficient and not returning to you the value that it keeps stealing from you. And even President Trump last night was laying out some of the waste.
$40 million to improve the social and economic inclusion of sedentary migrants. Nobody knows what that is. $8 million to promote LGBTQI+ in the African nation of Lesotho, which nobody has ever heard of. $60 million for indigenous peoples and Afro-Colombian empowerment in Central America. $60 million.
That's what the government steals from you every 2 weeks. They're like, we'll take that and we'll spend it on this. How can you be a sedentary migrant? Isn't that an oxymoron? All right, we got Mark in Virginia Beach on line 3. Hey there, Mark. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, I'm ready to yell. Congratulations! I'm so happy for you, brother.
Thanks, Mark.
So,
this will be good.
like everybody else, please remember my phone number so we can get through on the bat line. You are going to be up against a tough lineup, but I know you can do it. I know you can displace Trey Clavis, whatever. You know who I'm talking about.
Well, if you don't know his name, it doesn't sound like a tough lineup.
It is. I know him. But yesterday was a fiasco with those Democrats, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, my God. They were unbelievable.
How weak are they?
They're so weak, but also in their own way, hilarious. I couldn't help but laugh at the whole thing. I thought it was so funny. I was so happy for our country. I was so happy that they were miserable. Everything just went well. In fact, I'll share with you some of the most wild moments last night, not just during the speech, but after, as the left-wing media outlets got their chance to get a kick in against American citizens who are surviving cancer? 358.